Palm Desert, California. With me, you know him as the czar of the virtual background, without a virtual background right now, the one and only Pro GK Academy, Omar Zeenni. And joining us in the middle of what I think right now is a Pennsylvania blizzard. You know him, you love him. Basically a recurring guest on Inside the 18, the one and only Todd Hoffard. Todd, what's up, man?
Hey, how are you? Thanks for having me on. It's always a pleasure to be with you guys.
Whether
I'm in a snowstorm or not, it's always a pleasure.
It's so funny because you were just talking about your background right now, and it looks very much more domestic than the old one was. Where before you were always wearing this what was it, like this hoodie? It was like a vanilla hoodie or something like that, and the background was like kind of like very bare, and I was like, it kind of looked like you were in space. I thought you were in space, but I don't think that's where you were. I think that's I don't know where I'm going with that,
No.
guys. I should probably drink more root beer.
Yeah, not in space, but definitely different surroundings now. Back in the East Coast and in the house with the family. So a little bit more domesticated at the moment, I guess, so to speak.
Yeah. Now that actually, that's a really interesting point that you were just bringing up in regards to back with the family and everything like that. For a lot of people who weren't familiar kind of with the life of a goalkeeper coach, an MLS goalkeeper coach, a lot of people think it's just all sunshine and rainbows, but you can kind of say, there's a lot of time away from the family, isn't there?
There is. I mean, basically my whole pro career as a coach has been over half of it's been away from them. Myself, when I was in New York, I spent time up there. My family was back home in our home in Pennsylvania. RSL, kind of the same sort of thing. They were with me for a little while, for probably 2 of the 4 years that I was there. But it's always difficult. And even when they are there, you're traveling a lot, and you do miss a lot of things. You sacrifice a lot of time spent with the family, or seeing my son or daughter's soccer games or basketball games, or school projects, plays. You do miss a lot of that, unfortunately. But that's kind of comes with the territory a little bit.
Yeah. That's one of the things that Omar, kind of, he was looking at the whole coaching career pathway, and he was like, you know what, maybe I'll just start putting videos online. Maybe that's an easier career path for me.
It's tough, man. It's definitely, the professional life is tough. I mean, even watching, you see some of these big players who don't move, or are moving to different cities, and then just like you forget about the small guys who are in the league, NBA and soccer and stuff like that. Like, they're moving their whole families from New Mexico down to like San Diego, and then from San Diego to Utah. You know what I mean? So I just like, man, it's just a tough world. But luckily, hopefully you stick by somebody who's, like Jose Mourinho, and you go play, go coach in London, or, the cool cities that you want to be in, Madrid, versus me here in Arcadia, California, So I gotta find a very up and coming coach, stick by them a little bit, and see what happens.
Well, you definitely do have to be very transient, so to speak. You have to be willing to travel, because even if you are someplace, you mentioned a Jose Mourinho, he doesn't spend very long. He's one of the best managers in the world, and he'll spend a few years somewhere, and then next thing you know, he's somewhere else. So you have to be willing to travel to wherever that next position is.
Yeah, and we've talked about like Andrew Sparks in the past too. I mean, we kind of all know who he is, with Southampton now, and he moved to South Africa for a little bit. Then he moved, I think, to Austria for a little bit with Salzburg. So he was like all over the world. And then you just, now he's in Southampton, and it's like, closer to his home where he's from. But there's so much stuff from when he started to where he is now that you just go, man, would I have sacrificed that? I don't know if I would.
Yeah. And if you want to really progress and be in the highest levels you possibly can, there are things you have to sacrifice. And a lot of times that's one of them, that you have to be willing to go where those opportunities are. And Andrew, I commend him. He was underneath myself at New York Red Bull. He was running the academy when I was with the first team. And, now look at him, he's done the dirty work, so to speak. And now he's reaping the benefits and in the Premier League, and that's where a lot of people aspire to be.
Definitely.
So he's had a great career.
Yeah. It's so funny. So right now, Manuel Ruiz, had put in the comments section. He said, "What is the worst mistake you made?" And I'm not exactly sure what context he meant by that in the comment section. I'm not sure if he thinks this is a different show. Like, I feel like this might be some sort of like self-help show that he accidentally meant to comment on. I think my worst mistake that I've ever made, Manuel, is drinking this Virgil's root beer on the air, because it looks like I'm drinking alcohol on the air, which I think might go against like the Facebook like standards and practices thing. So I just want them to know, if anybody out there from Facebook is going, this is a non-alcoholic root beer. So I wanted to make that clear. But Todd, I think he was actually asking in regards to coaching mistakes, in regards to coaching career wise, and if there's any advice you can give Manuel there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if the show is long enough to go over the mistakes that I've made in my career, but you know, I think every time you do make a mistake, I think you just got to try to learn from it. You know, are there mistakes that I've made over the course of my 25, 27 years? Yeah, there's many mistakes with trying to instruct a player, mistakes of maybe the path of my career. I think the biggest advice I could ever make is you're going to make mistakes. You know, it's going to be on the field, the training field. You're going to make mistakes, whether it's a bad exercise, a bad session. It's giving bad advice. We all have done that. I'm going to continue to do that. Obviously, you don't do it on purpose, but it's going to happen. But I think you got to take ownership of those times you do make those mistakes, kind of reflect on it and say, okay, I'm going to learn from that. You know, and in that way, you're not making that same mistake maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 times, you know, down the road. Because if you do continue to make those same mistakes and they're glaring mistakes, then obviously your career is going to be a little bit cut short.
But Todd, I'm going to follow up that question real quick with you. I think a question that I've kids have asked me and young coaches have asked me is, are there any like bad habits? I think maybe that the question I can kind of refine for this person is kind of like, do you have any bad habits as a young coach or even as a player that you're happy that you kicked, because that could have been the downfall of you as a coach?
Yeah, I think I was pretty set in my ways as a young coach, where I thought, okay, any goalkeeper I work with has to be able to do this, and this, and do it this way. And if they didn't do it that way, I would get very frustrated and be like, no, you have to do it this way, you know. And over time, I began to kind of get a little bit more comfortable. Okay, well, maybe that doesn't fit that particular person that way that I was trying to push that technique or push that, body shape or whatever the case may be, you know, because I had a very, very structured image of what goalkeepers should look like. And over time, I've just got a lot more flexible with that, which I think has definitely helped me in my path, especially when I started working with a lot of older goalkeepers, that had very, very long established careers before they got to myself. Because then you really have to make sure that you're flexible, because the worst thing you can do when you start working with an experienced goalkeeper is trying to change them and dramatically change them. I'm not saying you're not going to tweak them here and there, but you know, somebody like a Nick Romano or worked with a Frank Rost when I was in New York, who was 20 years in the Bundesliga. I wasn't going to change him. And if I did try to change him, I would lose him quick. Earlier on in my career, I would have probably tried to change him, and do it my way. And that's something that I definitely learned over time.
Mike, one more. I know we got to get to the topic. I have one more question.
Okay. Yeah.
No, because I had Ian Foyer on my like a IG live a while ago, and I asked him, what was your experience like with the national team? And he said it was great. And I said, what did you take away from it? He said, honestly, the fact that I was able just to step up and coach the guys. Like a lot of people think that you have Tim Howard or you have big names that come through and you're just kind of there to be someone who serves the ball. He's like, no, I actually came in, I challenged some ideas with Tim, and I asked him a few things, and I think he's like, I think he respected me because I challenged him. So kind of like what you're saying, obviously you kind of have to be open-minded to Nick Romando coming in and he's your guy at RSL, and you kind of have to be more open-minded that maybe your ideal aesthetic for a goalkeeper and how it's supposed to look technique-wise may be a little bit different. But do you feel like kind of to Ian's point, did you feel like you were able to challenge him in ways, and did you feel like by challenging him you gained more respect from him?
Absolutely. At the end of the day, whether they're a young player or they're a more experienced player, they still want to be coached. They want to be instructed. They want leadership. So, and they will challenge you. They'll challenge you at every corner, every turn to see if you are willing to challenge them, if you understand them, you're knowledgeable, they'll challenge you all the time. One example with Nicky was when probably about 6 months after I got there, I was noticing he was just a little bit more closer to his line. And I was trying to get him into his wheelhouse. Obviously, Nicky's not a 6'5" goalkeeper. He's 5'10", but his strength was in and around his body, that bubble around his body. And I started pulling together some video of him in his, like a year, 2, 3 years before, where he was just, very, very good, very solid, making a lot of saves, had a big range, where I felt when I first got there, his range wasn't quite as good. And I started analyzing the video, and I noticed that he was about half a yard back on a lot of similar shots in his starting position. So I presented it to him, and at first he was kind of a little bit resistant, a little bit hesitant. And when I first started to show him 2 to 3 years prior to now, the light bulb started going, okay, yeah. And I think at that point, that was one of the big turning points for me, because I had data. I had data that I could back up what I thought I saw. Now I had that data of the video to actually show him, and I think it earned a lot of respect from him. And then we just had like 1 or 2 trigger words that we would use, get forward or position. And then that was, in the flow of an activity, then it would kind of trigger him to get a little bit higher. And I'm not saying like 4 or 5 yards higher. We're talking like maybe a half
marginal.
a yard. Yeah,
marginal.
Very, very, very slim. But that little bit got him into a little bit better position to make those saves around the bubble than if he was maybe that half a yard deeper.
And I think, honestly, I think that's like the job of the coach is to, obviously back what you're saying up. And I think once you back it up, now the player can be a little bit more aware of what they're doing. Because a lot of times, like I tell kids all the time, I say, do you even understand where you are in the goal? And like, do you have any triggers that, visual triggers of where you are in the goal, so you understand what that should feel like every single time, your most optimal position? They're like, no, not really. So then you show them the footage, and now they can pair kind of, what the footage and you said the data points are showing you compared to now what they're feeling, and kind of, give them some more guidance and awareness of where they are. So now it's not just movement just to move, it's intended movement. It's very intentional stuff. So yeah, that's a really good point though. I think that's something that all the young coaches out there, if you're listening, like, don't just come at somebody with information. You got to come at them with like hard facts. You know what I mean? You can't just have opinions in the pro game. Everyone has opinions, but if you can back those opinions up by actual factual evidence, that's the next game.
Yeah, because if you don't have the factual evidence, they're going to question you. And if you don't have an answer for it, you are in trouble. You've just lost every bit of respect.
Yeah.
So you've got to make sure once you do present it, that you've always got an answer, and if you've got that visual answer to go along with it, then you're going to get somewhere.
Yeah.
What's really great about what we're doing right now, guys, for this first 10 minutes right here is basically, this is the topic right here, guys. This is remote learning. We have been learning through the one and only Todd Hoffard right now, through the process of this podcast right now. We've been getting guidance, not just for ourselves, but other goalkeeper coaches who are on the comment section right now. So this is literally what we're trying to discuss in today's topic. Do you see how I segue that, Omar? It's very solid, right? It's very solid right there. So Todd, for those of us out there who might not be familiar with what you're doing right now with the Goalkeeper Coach Mentorship Program off the field, what is remote learning in your eyes?
For me, it's basically what we've just been talking about, and being able to look, analyze in more of that kind of classroom type of environment. The only difference is, obviously, I'm not sitting somebody side by side on a laptop. It's doing something like this over a Zoom call, but it's the same sort of thing. It's via that computer, via the Zoom call, via Facebook Live, whatever mechanism you're going to be using. But it's doing those things that you typically don't get to do on the training field. It's kind of like that supplemental training. So what I just talked about, Nicky, obviously that wasn't on the training field. That was after training. You're in an office setting and you're actually going over video and you're analyzing. Just so happens with the remote learning, you're just doing it over the computer, but it's the same exact things. It's that classroom environment. And I think that's just as important as, if not more so, you're going to be that student of the game, if not more so than the actual on the field. because that's where you're going to start to figure out the game a little bit, your positioning or your position, the nuts and bolts of where you need to be, what you need to be doing.
Yeah.
Omar, go ahead.
No, I think just to Todd's point, I think, I mean, for me, at least as a player, I was super, as you can see with my breakdowns and everything, I really wanted to understand the why and figure out specifically what it was about goalkeeping that could make me better. And I think a lot of times with the virtual classes now that we're seeing with Zoom and since the pandemic hit, is just that a lot of kids, whether it's, just anxiety about the position or whatever it is, a lot of that can just be solved by talking it out. And when you start, obviously talking it out, you give it less of an impact in your head, and less, they always say there's rent being paid in your head by your anxiety and all the things that you're afraid of as a goalkeeper. So I think, and even in the virtual sessions, and someone with your experience, Todd, just having those conversations is so nice to get that fluid, just get all those like negative thoughts that you have about yourself as a goalkeeper out. And then from there, once those are out, now you can see the game for, okay, what are my instincts? What do I bring to the game? Versus, okay, I hope I don't make a mistake. I hope I can, sweep under the rug all the issues that the opposing team might see on me. So I think having those discussions is super important.
Yeah, I agree. And also, having somebody that's kind of been there, done that, not just myself, but other special guests that I bring in that we have discussions about various different things, whether it's leadership, whether it's, one-on-ones and breakaways, whatever, it might be technical stuff. It might be more tactical. It might be a physical component. Like we had a discussion with a strength and conditioning coach from MLS, and it's having those discussions that when I was a young kid, I never had. I never had and somebody to kind of bounce ideas off of, or somebody that's been through a bad patch that understands what you're going through. Okay, and now how do we rebound from that? Having the ability to pick up the phone or send an email, send a text, and try to, okay, let's figure out, this is what you're going through. How can we help?
Exactly.
To have access to somebody on a day-to-day basis. And that's kind of the reason why I put something like this together, was to help kids, because I never had it, and there's still a lot of kids out there that don't have that type of mentor or that type of person that literally they can at any moment just pick up a phone and ask a question.
Yeah. And I think one of the things with that is as well too, is that I think there's a lot of kids out there that didn't even know that was available to them. Like, coming up as like as a goalkeeper, I think a lot of kids, they think of the physical component. They think of, when I'm there with my coach, I can ask questions, but then they think when he leaves, it's like they're off the clock. And like, I don't want to bother them. I don't want to text them or call them, or like, what do I even ask them or whatever? And, I know I made it, a thing for myself personally when I was a younger goalkeeper coach, to try to connect with the kids and try to reach out and find out, what's going on with this and stuff like that. And some gravitated towards it and some didn't gravitate towards it. And that's totally cool. But I think nowadays, with the capabilities like you're talking about, is like, Todd, you can work with kids in the Philippines, who may never meet you in person, but they know that they can confide in you, because there are programs out there like that. So maybe for some of the coaches out there who maybe are thinking, are like, okay, so what kind of variables do you have to kind of take into consideration when you're putting together a mentor program?
I think for me, I mean, I can only, vouch for my experience, but when I was piecing this together, there was a couple things that I really wanted to be aware of. And one was, how big of a program do I really want? That for me was really important. Do I want 1,000 kids in a program, or do I want 10 kids? For myself, I wanted to keep it very small. I joke that Jerry Maguire is one of my favorite movies, and that less is more type of thing. That for me, that works. I don't want to be a factory that's just churning out goalkeepers. I want to be able to make a feasible impact on whatever goalkeeper is with me. So I keep it to 25, 30 goalkeepers. That's really all I really kind of want to work with. That way I know I have the ability to make it very personable and have an impact on each individual one. So size for me was very important. The quality of the guests that I was going to bring in, who do I have access to that's going to have a big, strong voice that has a lot of experience, and maybe even more so than myself, that we can, again, make an impact. How do you track? How do you physically track players when it's in a remote or virtual experience, and there's things that I've put together with Excel spreadsheets to help track the players that they can help track themselves, whether it's in training, whether it's in games, how to track their games, how to track how many goals they're conceding, where they're conceding goals, things that they probably never even thought they could ever remotely even track. But for me, that's something that's very, very important, and I want to be able to track that. I give them the tools, and then they have to kind of monitor that, and then they report it back to me so I can actually physically track that. So for example, if I ask a player, what did you do last Tuesday at your training session? 9 times out of 10, the kid's like, I have no idea. No clue. Well, yeah, because you're not tracking it. So I give them some spreadsheets and things of how to track it so they can monitor what they're doing in their training sessions. So over the course of a month, 6 months, a year, they know what they've been covering. We put together IDPs for them. So their individual development plans. So if they're weak in an area and we know that because of their IDP, well, maybe it's crosses. Well, now in your training, if you're looking and analyzing your training, you're looking and going, well, you haven't worked crosses in the last 3 months. There's a reason why you're probably not as good in that area. So how to track, that was a big thing. And then kind of the final thing, which I think is probably one of the most important, and we've touched on already, is how much access do you have with the players? And for me, I want them to not be afraid to pick up the phone. Give me a call. They all have my cell phone. They all have my WhatsApp number. They all have, access to text. They can email me. Zoom. If they want to do a Zoom, they shoot me a text. Can we get on a Zoom with my parents? And we've got some questions. Boom, we get on. So for me, those 4 things, the size, the quality of guests, how to track, and then how much access they were 4 big major variables for me of what I wanted in a program.
I mean, my gosh, you just brought up so many really fantastic, aspects of virtual learning. And honestly, I know, Omar, you put a little bit of time of this during the quarantine, doing some different mentor programs. And one of the issues that Todd just touched on was bandwidth, because you wanted to make sure that the content was quality.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's definitely the hard part. Is I know Todd and other coaches as well who have been in that professional setting. You guys have an idea like IDPs, and you can have close contact with these players throughout the year that you can track their progress. But it's just like all that effort and all those hours that you've done kind of organizing that. Once you have a mentorship program like this, which I don't think I was ready for, was being organized in that sense and making sure that you have ways to track players and have goal-oriented conversations where I don't think I was able to kind of like wrap my head around it, because I'm like, if I'm giving it to one person, then crap, I have to do it for 5 other people. It's just exhausting. So for me, I couldn't do it along with the editing and stuff. So That's why, credit to you, Todd. It's definitely one of those ones where it's not just a project you start to make money. That's probably the best way to put it. It's more of like, no, you're going to sink your teeth into a project like this. You want to make sure that, again, less is more, and you have more quality in terms of information that you're providing versus just a quantity of people, just so you can hit a quota of a number. And I think that's where my mindset needed to evolve a little bit more. Because again, I told Mike, I'm still living at home, so I'm trying to like find ways to create a revenue stream, and it's not.
Don't break the fourth wall, Omar. You're world famous Pro GK Academy. You can't say that.
No, I'm saving money.
Okay. You live at Malibu. You live at Malibu, right on the beach.
Yeah. I need to change my background a little bit, but no, I think that's what it is. I think that's what online learning is. Just as a coach, and anybody who wants to try to venture into something like that, you got to be extremely organized. Because if you're not organized, kids can figure it out right away, and it's not good. You want to make sure that you're always trying to track what they're doing, and again, give them some, not homework, but like things to think about when they're on the field. Like Todd said, okay, how many hours did you work on crossing? Oh, well, obviously you're not very good if you're not doing 2-3 hours a week. So now it's like, now they're actually putting numbers to things and variables to things that otherwise you wouldn't necessarily be aware of unless somebody who is organized, brought that up to you.
Todd was watching everybody
Right.
during the lockdown year, the COVID year of 2020, really helpful for you, because you were kind of able to kind of pick and choose based on what you were seeing in different webinars and different podcasts and different virtual trainings and all that, and said, oh, you know what, I like this. I don't care for this. This really gravitates towards what I can do in regards to my strengths. This isn't necessarily in my wheelhouse.
I think we all do that. That's kind of the art of figuring out how you want to do things. You know, it's kind of like you go on all these courses and you kind of pick something out you like, you pick something out you like, you pick something out you like, oh, I don't like that. And you kind of mold it into something that's your own. And that's just exactly what I did with this, you know, and we were all doing, you know, a ton of different things. You know, I mean, I was on Instagram lives and podcasts like this and all kinds of different things all the time, or listening to other people. And it's exactly right. You know, you're trying to figure out kind of as we go. You know, a year ago, virtual learning was something I never remotely even thought about. You know, everything was, it's got to be in person. Well, the one thing I think that's come out of this pandemic in a positive way is you don't have to be in person. You know, with the power of Zoom or Facebook Live and a lot of these different, you know, mechanisms, you can do just as much. And it's not just in the soccer world. I mean, you look at my children, you know, they were online today. You know, they had off school today, but they didn't really have off school because they can do it virtually. So that never happened before this pandemic. You know, if it snowed like it is today, they didn't have school. That was it. And no homework, no nothing. They canceled school yesterday and there was still class today. They just happened to be home. So that's one thing. It's not just here within our world of goalkeeping. It's all over the world. You know, there's so many more people that are probably going to permanently be working remotely than ever before. So I think that's a massive, massive positive that's come out of this pandemic.
You know, it's so funny that you just said that in regards to the snow day thing, because I'm like, oh my gosh, that's the one negative that these kids are getting out of this whole thing, is that the teachers have figured out that they don't get snow days anymore, that they can just keep the school year rolling along when they reopen the schools. So I'm sorry about that, kids. You guys will never get to experience the joy of waking up and it's just the weather's just so bad outside that you get to stay in and watch cartoons. So
well, mine are at the moment. They're somewhere outside here, either in the backyard or in the front yard with the dog playing as we speak. So I said, look, I need some time away, and they were like, no problem, we're going out in the snow. I was like, okay, rather you than me.
You brought up a good point with regards to, you know, picking and choosing. And then Omar, I know you were very humble in regards to you saying, you know, you were doing this, you were doing that. Did you feel, Omar, that it was kind of one of those things where you were trying to do so much that it ended up diluting the content that you were giving?
Yeah, no, I think that's probably the best way you could put it. I think it's just like, it's only so much bandwidth a person has in terms of how much they can put together and then how much they can give to people. And I remember even watching like a documentary was talking about how like Mark Zuckerberg and like all these big executives, they have everything planned out, their meals, the clothes they wear every single day, because those are decisions that they can save for actual big decisions at work. So little decisions always add up. And I think for me, it was just those things of like, okay, I'm having a conversation with you, Mike, for an hour. And then after that conversation, I feel very good. And then I have to step into another conversation with somebody else, I have to step into another one. Then I got to a point where I was just like, oh boy, I don't know. I've never done this before. So on the first shot, it was definitely one of those ones where I wasn't organized with my thoughts and I put too much on my plate. And again, like I said, I always say, you know, if you've never done it before, you shouldn't be charging for it right away. You should probably, you know, get a few people and then from there kind of filter out the things that you do and you don't want to do. And then once you have that, then you feel comfortable and confident doing that. But I think I bit off more than I could chew. And I apologize to those that signed up. I think that's all I can really say is I apologize. And hopefully in the future, we can kind of reconnect on something like this.
Well, we are working on something that you're definitely gonna be able to connect with people in the future.
Oh, it'll be better.
Yeah. We found a way to take it to another level. But geez, I'm giving away too much. Anyway, the thing I do want to say though, Omar, is that your heart was in the right place. You know, for lack of a better term. So I want any young goalkeeper coach out there who feels like, oh my gosh, they're talking about me. There's just some of the things that I did wrong, you know, during this quarantine time when I was trying to do virtual training and all of that stuff. If your heart was in the right place, you didn't do anything wrong, you know? We all learn, and I'm sure they gained something from it. And you know, Todd, one of the things that's really, really impressive about what you're talking about is everything you've been talking about has been off the field learning. Because so many people out there have said, well, I don't understand. when is the session? When is he going to have them doing jumping jacks on the screen? Or like, why isn't there a medicine ball and they're bouncing a bunch of medicine balls and then, trying to juggle the ball 17 times and stuff like that. And that's something that we talked about. And you said, you know what, that's not a part that I wanted to include in my program.
Yeah. And that's, for one, it's very difficult.
Yeah.
If you're trying to train somebody virtually, especially live, is very difficult, just because the technical aspects that are involved and be able to pinpoint and see exactly kind of what's going on can be difficult. Can be very, very difficult depending on who's filming it, who's filming that young player. Are they moving the camera all around? Are they really in focus? Are they really in the picture? And it's very difficult. And then the service, maybe somebody's serving the ball that doesn't really, it's a mom or dad, and nothing against them, but maybe they don't really know what I'm looking for, and it doesn't translate virtually as well. So that can be a very, very difficult component. Not that it can't work. I think it can, but it was just something that I didn't want to venture into. So a lot of this program that I developed basically stemmed from my overnight camps, where we always, every day, would have a classroom environment. So I took a lot of that classroom type of element and said, well, we can do a lot of that virtually, and this is what a lot of the kids are typically missing anyways. They get a lot of the on-field stuff, whether it's with the goalkeeper coach or their outfield, the rest of the outfield players that are involved in their normal team training sessions, but they don't get a lot of the classroom aspect. For example, how to set up a wall. And here's a PowerPoint presentation of how to set it up. These are some situations. Here's some general starting positions, or breaking down video like we discussed, a few minutes back, breaking down video. There's just so many of those components that when are you going to break video, especially at a youth player? Are you going to break video down? Outside of them showing up for the field, you never see them. They're not in a college environment where you can bring them into your office or anything like that. It's very difficult. So this is an avenue that they can get some of that classroom environment. That's kind of that supplemental training. It's not going to be in place of their on the field. It's just a supplemental piece to add to their growth and their pathway.
Yeah. Well, what I would say to that too, and Todd, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think, and we were talking about the last podcast, we were talking about how, goalkeeper coaches and people always ask, as goalkeepers, do I need to have the same fitness test as the field players? We say no, but there is a certain level of fitness that you need to be at. And then once you're at that level, then you can apply the field player fitness, then you can apply the goalkeeper fitness, but you have to have some benchmark or some goal that you need to hit. And then from there, then you start adding goalkeeping stuff. So I would say the exact same thing when you kind of translate it to goalkeeping information and goalkeeping knowledge. I think knowledge is power. And I think, growing up, I've said the story 2 times on the podcast, but growing up, I would watch Arsenal games in the morning. And my dad asked me, hey, do you watch what the goalkeeper's doing when he sets up his wall? Do you watch what the goalkeeper's doing when he's wasting time? Do you understand why he's wasting time? Do you understand the context? And I'd said, no. He's like, Omar, but then you're wasting your time. I need you to watch intently as to what is happening in these moments. And once you understand why they're doing it, then you can apply it for yourself. So I think when you come to virtual training, and Todd made a good point about a lot of these kids don't really have the supplemental training of understanding why you set up a wall a certain way. You've just always been told, and you're kind of guesstimating when you step on the field. But when you actually understand the why, and sometimes you need a classroom session to just kind of go through all your instinctual thoughts as to, okay, well, I have the tallest guy over here. Well, why do you have the tallest guy over there? Well, my coach told me to do that. Well, then you don't understand why. So I think what you're doing, Todd, is doing a good job, is creating that level of benchmark of understanding of the position. And then once you're in those high intensity moments, because you already have a platform to stand on, now you can actually make better decisions with that level of knowledge that you have up there. And I think that's a really good idea. It's not a good idea. It's a good understanding of who these goalkeepers are as people. And like I said earlier in the podcast, a lot of kids, they, want to get better. They want to do this. They don't know how. And then they actually sit down in a classroom session. They're like, so you're telling me that's why my coach taught me that? Oh my God. And they've never had that a kind of broken understanding to them. So I think it's a really good understanding of why they're doing things.
Well, and I think it also gives them a platform to develop their own conversations and their own questions and answers. Like typically I'll have within this program. Every week we have calls, we have Zoom calls. So, but every other week we'll have like a long topical call. And then we'll have a follow-up call the next week based on that previous week. 2 weeks ago, for the first time, it was an open forum. So I didn't have a topic, and they knew this going in. I'll email them and say, look, there's no topic this week. It's an open forum. You guys all have situations that come up in your games, in your training, whatever. I want you guys to come up with the situations. You present them, and we're all going to discuss them. So it was an open, so it's not just me just regurgitating information or instructing. I try to give them a platform sometimes too, to come up with their own scenarios. And not just me coming up with the answers. We're as a group. So for me, that's them putting on their coaching brain. They're thinking about, okay, Johnny, there was a situation. What's your opinion on that? What would you do in that situation? So it forces them to think a little bit, and that's the education piece. That's what they get in their classes at school. Why can't we bring that same sort of learning to the soccer side? So as well, I try, communication. We all talk about communications being such a massive, massive element of goalkeeping, which it is. Well, I want to call on you. If I see, I've got the Zoom screen and I see somebody that's very, very quiet, every once in a while, I'm going to be like, hey, Sarah, you haven't said anything. What's your opinion on that? I want them to come out of their shell a little bit and have no fear to give their opinion. Yeah. And to voice what they have on their mind, because hopefully then that's going to translate. And it's actually, I just had a discussion with one of the parents the other week of how they're starting to see their son on the field come out of that shell a little bit. And they're saying it's becoming from these chats and these discussions, and which for me, that's awesome. That's exactly what I want to see. I want to see somebody have that comfort to communicate and comfort to ask a question.
Yeah. And
go ahead.
Sorry, man. No, I think it goes back to your point earlier, Todd, about how, with Nikki, right? You had video evidence, you had specific data points as to this is where it's working, this is where it's not working. We can improve it by a little bit. Then you have those trigger words. And now, again, that's talking about knowledge is power. Whenever you speak about something that you're knowledgeable about, you're going to have confidence. So I think you're introducing the level of understanding that it takes to play at the next level at a young age now. And that's why you're saying the parents are coming at you and saying, hey, look, my son or daughter are coming out there with way more confidence. It's like, it's not a surprise. I'm not working on any magic here. I'm not doing anything crazy. All I'm doing is giving them the tools that sorry, before I get sidetracked, but one of my friend's dads, he told me when I was a goalkeeper at Davis, he texted me, he said, son, you're doing a great job. And remember, don't ever change, but everything you'll ever need in life is already inside of you. You just have to find it. And I think when you have these conversations with these young kids, they're slowly unraveling and the layers of who they are as people. And they're going, oh my God, you're telling me that I can actually talk to my defense and know what I'm supposed to say? So you're actually telling me that when it's like it's a free kick in the 90th minute and it's on top of the 18, now I know I can put 5 or 6 goalkeepers in there and I know exactly why. And I think once you start giving them the confidence of understanding why they do things as a goalkeeper, that is the next level. And I think that, again, that's why these platforms and the situation that we're in the world, it's like you're finding solutions to problems that have always been there, but now there's a reason why people are listening. And I hope that they're listening now and it continues for time and time after.
Yeah. But by the way, I was just thinking that whole time you were doing that, Omar, is that, you're giving all this fantastic information right now. Are you going to have the bandwidth to run your session after the podcast? We want to make sure that you still have something left in you to say to those young men and women.
I do, but what I also do like though, Todd, I think, and Mike as well, I think what Todd said, something really, really good there, is that a lot of times when I run my sessions and when I do, stuff with my goalkeepers, I'm very, I come in with my session plan and I don't really allow them to coach themselves or even I've done it more recently where I've said, hey guys, I'm going to step away, set up the next drill. I need you guys to just chat about, hey, the first group of 2 just went. Can you guys tell the next group of 2 that are stepping into that same exercise what you guys felt, what you guys could coach better, what you thought you could have done better? So I'm slowly taking my foot off the gas and letting them apply their own knowledge in the position. I think that's, again, really good to allow them that confidence to step up and understand, why is Coach Omar, putting this session together? Okay, what am I supposed to be feeling, so that I'm intentional about what I'm feeling and I'm aware of what I'm supposed to be feeling as I step into the exercise. So I think that's also a really good point as well, and good reminder for me. So increases my bandwidth a little bit. Good reminder for me as I go into the session.
Well, and along that same point, when I do run all my goalkeeper clinics and goalkeeper programs, I encourage players, whether they're in a group of 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, to communicate to that goalkeeper, give them instructions. So if I'm paired with you, Omar, if you're not giving me the appropriate service, all right, it's not your fault. It's my fault. And I'll tell the kids that. Whose fault is it? And they'll say, oh, the person's serving. No, it's your fault, because they're serving you the ball. But if you're allowing them to serve the way that they currently are, that's your fault, because you have not given them any information otherwise. So if you want that service to be better, you have to tell them, Omar, I want it right here. Serve the ball right to my face. And once they do that, yeah, Omar, perfect. That's exactly where I want it. Good, perfect. Now all of a sudden you're giving them that confidence to speak, like you were just mentioning.
Totally.
And I'll use the phrase, if you're unable to communicate with the person that you're working with, that's one person. If you're unable to do that with one person, how can I ever expect, when you get on an 11 versus 11 team, how can I expect you to communicate with 10 if you don't have the ability to communicate with one? So for me, it's all about, it goes back to that communication again, and having that confidence, so it doesn't matter whether it's in a virtual world or if it's actually on the field. That's a big, major key component. And it's, we try to bring that into the virtual environment just as much as we do on the field.
I mean, well, honestly, I love absolutely what you're saying right there. But what I love even more is a shout out to Jamie Campbell's mom, Kim Campbell, who just said, so grateful to all 3 of you. Love that you are part of my girls' journey. So, and Jamie is one of the members of your virtual community. So shout out to the Campbells. When you talk about students of the game and everything like that, those are the type of goalkeepers that I know you've been striving to bring into this program, Todd. It's a two-way street. When you say it's you have a cap in regards to how many kids you can bring into the program, there's also a certain type of kid that you're looking for the program too. It's not right. It's not for everybody.
It's not, and, Jamie's mom's on right now. So hello to her and hello to Jamie. Jamie's the type of person that it works for. She's all in. I know there was one time we were on a Zoom call and she was on vacation. And there she was on her laptop, and her mom actually zipped me a note and said that they were on holiday. That's the type of kid that you want to work with. And that's the type of kid you're going to go to the end of the earth for. Because they have that willingness, they have that passion to get better and take in and absorb information and learn and grow from it. So that's the type of kids I think we all want to work with. That's not every kid. It's not for every kid. But for the ones that really want to get better, whether they have aspirations of playing on the best local club team that they possibly can in their area or representing their country, whatever the case may be, doesn't matter to me. As long as you have that passion, that drive to be the best in whatever area you want to be,
Guys,
and it's a matter of taking in. Go ahead, Omar.
No, I have to leave. I'm sorry. I have a session at 3:30 and I got to go.
No problem. No problem.
But Todd, it's always a pleasure. And I wish you nothing but success. And hopefully I visit you when the temperature gets a little bit warmer.
Sounds good. I will save some snow for you.
Please. Okay, guys. See you, Mike.
Take care,
we'll see you in a bit. Okay, so now that we've lost the one and only Omar Zeenni, Pro GK Academy, we can just talk about him for the next 20 minutes, what he does wrong. No, what I wanted to say, Todd, is this is, I know, kind of going a little bit off topic right there, but something was really good that was brought up, and I don't know if it was you or Omar, in regards to the independence. I think it was Omar. It was the independence about, I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to let them do the session. I think there's such an insecurity in goalkeeper coaching, especially in the United States, where goalkeeper coaches feel they have to say something or they're not coaching. And I know we've had this discussion before, but don't just say something for the sake of saying something, right? Make sure that what you're saying is relevant to the session. And then sometimes you don't really need to say something if everything's moving, if the players are working and they're understanding what's going on and the session's moving smoothly. Why are you going to? Why? Because you're worried that the parents or the DOC is going to walk by and they're going to think you're not coaching?
Yeah, and I think at any level, you got to let them fail too. I mean, we all learn best from failure, and I think you're 100% correct. We can, and we've all done it. I've been there where we overcoach. You do feel you've got to constantly be saying something. And I know I had an experience with where I was running a program a couple of years back, and there was a younger coach there, and I looked across, and this young player was just getting so frustrated because the one coach just literally on every rep was giving him information, and another rep, information, another rep, information, another rep, information. And the poor kid was getting so frustrated until finally I walked over and let him go. Let him go. Stop and just let him deal with it. Let him work on it on his own time. And then when things really break down, then step in and say something, or if things are going really right, commend him, because we got to be able to give that. But I think there is a tendency, and like I said, we've all done it, just to give too much information. But there are times where they've got to figure things out on your own. It is the same thing, whether it's in a classroom at school. Your teachers, I was brought up in the fact that you're never going to learn from a teacher. You're never going to learn from a coach. Your learning is always going to be outside of that. A coach, a teacher, they're going to give you the groundwork, but you're going to do all the learning when you're away from them. That when you're outside and you're doing the homework up in your room or in your home office or whatever, or you're doing all the training in the backyard, that's where you're going to learn. That's where you're going to progress, not when you're actually with the coach or with the teacher. So again, they're going to give you the groundwork, but it's your responsibility then to do, and for the biggest reason, you're going to spend more time with yourself than you ever are with that coach or with that teacher. So that's where your growth, that's where your development is going to come from.
And I always stress this with players, and I don't know at what point I had this evolution as my philosophy, but I started, explaining to goalkeepers, especially the younger ones, that, you're literally, if you think that you're going to become a goalkeeper from going to these private sessions with me or group sessions with me, or even working with your club team at the goalkeeper training sessions, then you're completely mistaken, because I've started to approach my sessions as active lectures. Essentially, it's like, this is a learning environment. You're learning things that you're going to take, and then you're going to put in the work on your own, type of a thing. And then I see whether you've been developing or not when you come back to the next session. And you can tell the kids that have been putting work in and the kids that haven't been putting work in. But I try to really stress that, and I've had that even with parents. And I think any parents who are listening right now, they need to hear this too, especially even with the virtual program. If you think that in 6 months your kid's now going to understand the position, or they're going to have a different aspect about leadership, or they're going to, be more disciplined, or they're going to be a better communicator, and everything like that, because they're attending these webinars or whatever, like, you're mistaken. Like, all you can do is give them the tools, and then it's up to them to apply them to their own lives.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And it is. That's what it's all about. You can be the best coach or the best teacher in the world, but once that player or once that student leaves them, if they're not applying what they've been taught, it does no good, and I know for myself, I love when parents will watch sessions. I know there's a lot of coaches out there like, oh, I never want a parent watching a session. I love it. I absolutely love it. And the reason being is what I just said. Those players are going to be around mom and dad a lot more than they're going to be around me. So I want the moms and dads to be able to see what I'm doing and what I'm saying to them, how I'm saying it, what I'm correcting them on, what I'm commending them on. So when they are in the backyard with them, they know what I've been trying to instill in them, that they can maybe be that other voice because they're spending more time with them, or for me, and maybe I'm the one that's definitely in the minority in that, but that for me, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for that student that really, or player that wants to take the initiative and is taking the responsibility of their own pathway. I'm going to, especially in this program, I'm going to provide you all the tools I possibly can, and I'm going to give you the spreadsheets of how to track things. And we're going to discuss a lot of different things. But at the end of the day, if you're not applying it on your own terms and taking the accountability of your own path and taking that responsibility of working on things, and it might be as simple as leadership. You might hear it, right, in a lecture, but you're not applying it, you're probably not going to be a better leader. Or if we're talking about starting position, whatever the case may be.
So let's take that a little bit, and I don't obviously I don't want to make this an infomercial for what you're doing, but I think you are doing what this topic is, and that's why we really wanted to have you on to discuss this. Do you have any session plans or any little sheets or videos or stuff like that from the program that you want to share with everybody on here so they can kind of see what it's all about?
Yeah, I can share. Let's see. Bear with me.
Sure.
Let me see if I can share my screen here. I put a little 2-minute video together. Let's see if I can find it.
Okay. All right. Well, that's your text screen. So, there we go. Let's see if you can expand it. There we go. Beautiful.
Can you see that?
Yeah.
So it gives you a little bit. There's some sound that'll go on, and it gives you a little bit of an idea of some of the sessions that we've actually done.
Well, the sound's not playing, but that's okay. You can just talk through it. I'd actually rather have not the sound and you just being able to kind of describe what's going on right here.
We talked a little bit about the DNA of a goalkeeper and kind of our whole goalkeeper curriculum. This is Ian Fourier, talking about breakaways and breaking down breakaways into 3 different types of scenarios. So talking about positioning and starting positions, and if they take a big touch, that kind of thing, what's kind of going on. This was Mark Simon Segal, a sports psychologist, talked, a lot about a lot of different things about dealing with success, dealing with failure as a goalkeeper. Obviously had a couple other topics. Nicole Barnhart, she was on recently, obviously played with the women's national team, and she talked a lot about her experiences. And, and that screen, obviously it's not all about sunshine and rainbows. There's a lot of, dealing with injuries and how do you deal with different things. Luis was one of my goalkeepers in New York. He came on. He had a great talk about a lot of different things and a lot of different elements. This year's Ethan Zahn. I don't know if anybody knows Ethan Zahn, good friend of mine, won Survivor Africa, but a lot of people don't know he was actually a former pro goalkeeper. And he had a very, very interesting story of not only playing professionally, but his path was so much different than your average professional goalkeeper. So let me stop this share here. And that's kind of, a lot of the different things, I want to bring in a variety of people that have a lot of different paths, a lot of different experiences that they can, it's not always just a straight path. You go from one area to the next and it's just boom, a straight line. No, there's going to be a lot of bumps in the road. And like Ethan, his story was phenomenal. He got dropped from a lot of different clubs, thought his career was over. His path took him to Africa. I mean, whoever thinks about going to Africa to be a professional goalkeeper?
Yeah.
Most people don't. But that was the path he chose. And it was a great path for him. And it led him into a lot of different other scenarios. Ended up fast forward, he goes on Survivor, wins in Africa, and that just exploded his career. So I try to bring in a lot of different people that have a lot of different paths, because there's no one path that everybody's going to make or everybody's going to take.
I also like what you did too, as well as that you brought in somebody necessarily who made a name for themselves outside of goalkeeping as well too, and utilized everything that they learned from being a goalkeeper and that pursuit of that career and that professional career and everything like that into another area of their life, and now has become a success because of what they've learned through that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. And if you couldn't hear it on that clip, he's talking about failure and how he embraces failure. Without failure, he would have never known where to go next. So, and again, that's not just in goalkeeping, that's just in life in general.
Yeah.
And for me, it's all about bringing on good, solid people too, and Ethan's just he's a good, solid dude. just a really, really good guy if you don't know him. So, and it's, as you can see, Luis, everybody that you would have seen on there is kind of the same scenario.
Yeah. It's funny. So Andreas, I always forget how to pronounce Andreas's last name. Papakostas. Andreas, I apologize for butchering it. It's very difficult for me to do Greek names. That's why I just say Giannis. I don't try to do the Antetokounmpo. I just leave it there. Is mentioning how much goalkeepers learn from workshops just as much as they do from their training sessions. And I think that this is an aspect that has been missing from a lot of goalkeeper training, is that group workshop. Just like when you go to a coaching license, I to tell you how much I've learned just from the group workshops when I'm working with everybody else. And that's one of the things I like about what you're doing with the virtual program, is that you have them break out into breakout rooms and have discussions on their own, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's anytime I think you go on a licensing course, for me at least, the most learning I ever had wasn't in the classroom, wasn't sitting with the instructor. It was when you would have that breakout room and you would discuss the topic that you were given, or you would discuss, hey, this is the way I've done it. How did you do, or how did you deal with this situation? That's where, for me, most of my learning, came. And it was just listening and discussing and chatting about different experiences that people had. And that's kind of the same sort of scenario here. I want them to be able to feel and experience that same sort of thing. Because one, it shows me if they're able to regurgitate some of the things that maybe we've discussed previously, and they're able to actually speak about it, tells me they're grasping it and they're learning it and they're able to discuss it with somebody else. If they're struggling discussing it, it gives me a little bit of a headway of, they might not grasp it, and maybe we need to relook at it and focus on it a little bit more, or have another discussion, or discuss it in a different way so they can understand it a little bit better.
So do you go back and watch that film to kind of see like how they're connecting and how much, for lack of a better term, like you said, they're grasping it, so that you can kind of decide, okay, this is how I need to take my mentoring for the next step?
Well, I do as well, but they also, in this program, they have a private page. So once they register and become a member, there's a private page that then they have access to. Every discussion we have is posted on that private page. Okay. So if they don't even understand it, or sometimes, with just life going on and, they miss a session, they always can go back and access that discussion that we had. Or if they didn't quite understand it, then go back and revisit it. And there's been many times where I said, hey, you remember when we talked to so-and-so, or remember we had this discussion? Here's the date, go back, watch that one again. But yeah, it's things that I watch as well, because I can learn too. Maybe I phrased it in a way that I should have maybe framed it a little bit differently. And the next time we talk about a similar topic, I can frame it a little bit differently. So yeah, it's definitely something that I want to look at too.
I want to talk about this right now, because a lot of people are listening to this and they're going like, wow, this sounds like it's a heck of a lot of time. One, I think the things that's really important when you're doing any sorts of these programs is to really kind of have a template of how you want to structure everything, so that you know how much time you want to dedicate to this, and how much time you want to dedicate to this, and how much time you want to dedicate to this. Do you have any advice on how you go about doing that? And like, for instance, the IDP program, like how much time should be into that?
I think I put all that onto the individuals. So okay. when somebody comes into the program, I'll sit down with them, just them and their parents. And we'll have maybe a chat of 30 minutes to 40 minutes to an hour, however long it takes. And there is a spreadsheet with a lot of different information, and it's a rating system, how they rate themselves and how their parents rate themselves. And we basically, from that framework, we come up with their IDP and recreate it. But I don't do it. I give them the template. And then I tell them, this is yours. This is a working document, and it is your IDP. It's not my IDP. You want to doctor it up, make it as pretty as you want? Perfect. But it's yours. And I will help you every step of the way, but I want you, again, it goes back to them taking ownership of their path. Yeah. Here's the template. This is the kind of stuff that we want in. And I'll show them a living, working one of one of my current players. And then they've got the framework, and it's their responsibility. Some do, some don't. Some keep up with it. Some, might never look at it ever again. But again, it's a matter of giving them the tools that hopefully they will take it to heart and they will kind of monitor themselves from it.
How old can you do this?
But I don't
this
want to
type of
do
training?
everything for them. I want them to be involved in sorry, say that again.
No. I was just asking right now because I'm thinking about how profound all of this is, and you know, there's probably some people out there listening who have, you know, younger kids. Like, how old can you realistically do this with, or how young really can you realistically do this with? And can you adjust things to make it reasonable for, I don't want to say the attention span, but what the bandwidth is of a younger keeper?
Yeah, I mean, every age group is learning.
Okay.
So is there going to be benefit for most age groups? Yes. I'll be honest, most of mine are like 12 to 20 years old. So they're all kind of in that same wheelhouse. Now, over the last probably 2 months, we've been discussing a lot about the college search process. So, and I've been very animated with the younger players to say, look, yes, I realize you guys are like 12 and 13 years old and you're still in middle school, but you guys actually are going to have the most benefit from this discussion. I know you don't think so right now, but you're going to benefit most than somebody that's a junior right now, who's already borderline out of that process. You guys actually at your age, you know, need to be thinking about things right now, because before you know it, like that, you're going to be in and you're going to be out of that process. So yeah, I think all age groups, they can all learn, they can all benefit. There's some things that we discuss that I'll go back, because part of the program, they get age specific guidelines, you know, so whatever age group they're in, because there's, you know, a 13-year-old is going to be looking at something completely different than an 18-year-old. And I'm aware of that. And we'll discuss different things. And for crossing, for example, we talk about starting positions off a cross. You know, I might structure it towards the older player, but then I'll also say, you know what, Timmy, you're 12. I don't expect you to be able to do this. This is my expectation of you. So I think you can still do it, but you also got to be aware of your audience and be able to say, okay, yes, this group is going to look at it this way, but this group is also going to look at it this way. So you've got to be very, very cognizant of what your audience really is. And for me, again, that's another reason why I want to keep it small, because I can be very aware of what my audience is. If I've got 100 some kids on there, it's very difficult to really monitor that.
But that's one of the mistakes that I've seen with a lot of these programs, is that they've got 300 kids on the thing and they're varying from 8 years old to 35, you know? So yeah. I'm using the term kid loosely, but just basically come one, come all goalkeeper. And then first off, there's not that personal attention. And second of all, you know, it's all over the place in regards to what their needs are. So do you ever branch it out and go like, okay, I've got these 5 kids, like they're all kind of on the same pathway. Let me do a session with just these 5 kids right here. As opposed to, you know, I'm going to have all 25 kids at the same time. Is that something that you do?
It'd be something I would definitely do. You know, if I felt there was a need for it, absolutely. I would definitely do something like that. We haven't done it yet because we're about 8 months in now. We've been very more generalized discussions. But yeah, if we got into a specific path, because I give them homework, I give them a weekly session as well. So if you follow my Instagram, you'll see a lot of the sessions and exercises that I'll give them. I'll give them like an exercise of the week. And then they'll send me video of them doing it. So I'm getting a little bit of an idea kind of where they are on a consistent basis, which is really good. And if I got a group of kids that are all around the same, maybe they're all struggling in one specific area, absolutely 100%. I would get those kids together and we would do something. Absolutely. But that's what differentiates. And that's the way I wanted to struggle it. And when you talked about the variables in the very beginning, it was all about size for me. I wanted to have that intimacy. I want that small that I can actually manage. And if I want to have a little offshoot group of 4 or 5 kids on a Monday night, I can do that. You know, if I've got several hundred kids, you can't even track them. I mean, how it's a full-time job just to be able to track and monitor 100 some kids. And that's just something, you know, how much of an impact would I really have if I had that many kids in the program?
I have a question for you because, at a lot of youth clubs, what they've been starting to do is kind of do like I don't want to call it a buddy system, but they've kind of been doing that where they've kind of like put an older's goalkeeper with a younger's goalkeeper to kind of help them out through the process. So maybe you got, your 16 DA kid or whatever it's called now, MLS Next kid, with a U9, U10 or whatever. Is that something you've ever thought about with remote learning, and could that work?
Yeah, I think I've done that with my camps and my clinics.
Okay.
Where you'll put, or it might not be a camper or somebody that's actually involved in it, but it might be more of like a junior staff member, and I'll put them with those kids. And the biggest thing I'm looking for is how are they able to, like we talked about earlier, can they regurgitate some of the information to that younger player? Because if they're able to say the same things or instruct or coach that younger player, that tells me they've really got a grasp of the knowledge, and they've got that comfort level, all right, to again communicate with that younger player. Yeah. So that to me tells me, well, okay, where are they in their growth? Do they have that presence and willingness to actually step out of there and instruct somebody? Because if they can instruct that one person, again, it goes back to what we talked about earlier. If they can instruct that one person, they're probably going to have the comfort in instructing 10 people. And now maybe 10 people in front of them, and there's 10, 15,000 people in the stands or more.
I've always seen that. I've always seen that the goalkeepers that I've had in the past who are the excellent communicators are the ones who can run sessions, the ones who could become goalkeeper coaches if that's the direction they want to go with their lives, and just I've seen so many goalkeepers who may not have had aesthetically the profile that you're looking for in a goalkeeper, but because they have that it factor, they're very, 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 very strong goalkeepers. And so I think that's fantastic, that you go that way. Finally, kind of as we're kind of wrapping up right here, because I know you've got a lot to do right now. You got your snowstorm, and you gotta sit around and do nothing else. I have to.
I'll be snow blowing probably before too long, and in fact, I can hear the neighbor just fired his up. So.
Oh man, do you have to do that at nighttime?
Just stay on as long as you want. We'll stay on as long as you want, because it just means I'm not doing the snowblower.
Oh, that's hilarious. Okay, so we can just keep going. I have actually, it's tonight is my dad and my stepmom's 30th anniversary dinner. So
nice.
Myself and my two sisters are help plan that out. And by that we mean that we're getting the dinner at the restaurant and then picking it up and bringing it here from for takeout. Because that's the extent of our cooking that we're doing. I think my sister's making a cake, but anyway, that's what I'm avoiding right now. Is having to go pick that up. But anyway, if there's any advice that you would kind of give to somebody, because I think there's a lot of coaches out there who haven't tried to do something like this with maybe they work at a club, and I know a lot of program directors have been talking to their goalkeeper coaches and said, hey, can you put something together like what I just saw online here or whatever? And a lot of them have been very hesitant because they're scared because they don't know what to do. What advice would you give them?
I think the biggest advice I'd give is just embrace it. This is kind of the world we're living in right now. Was it super comfortable for me when I first started? No, because one, anything we're typically uncomfortable with, we're probably not very good at, or we've never done it before. So we get uncomfortable. And I think you just have to embrace those moments, and this is, I personally don't think this is going away. This virtual learning or virtual world we're now living in, even when this pandemic is done and gone, I still think it's here to stay. So I think we have to embrace it, and not be afraid of the technology, utilize the technology. This is something that we all have, access to, and why not embrace it? Why not learn from it? Don't be afraid of it, and utilize it to the best potential we possibly can, because it could not only help myself or yourself, but it could help a young player too.
And just like I always tell young goalkeeper coaches out there, who struggle with, when their goalkeeper starts working with another goalkeeper coach and they get insecure and everything like that, rather than get insecure about it, reach out to Todd and say, hey, one of my kids just started working with you. Here's some information about them that might help you. Or Todd, what have they been experiencing in the program so that I might be able to help them out when I'm on the field and stuff like that. It's a two-way street, guys. And you got to look at us as we're all goalkeeper union. We all work together rather than looking at it as competition or anything like that.
Yeah, we're all here for goalkeeping. You know, at the end of the day, and that's one of the reasons you mentioned it, you know, about goalkeepers that typically are able to communicate are typically better goalkeeper coaches. Well, at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. If I can help a young goalkeeper not only be a better goalkeeper, but hopefully get into goalkeeper coaching, that's going to now just expand the more and more and more and more goalkeeper coaches, that now the American goalkeeper is definitely the best goalkeeper in the world. You know, ultimately, I think that's what we all want. We want goalkeepers in this country to be the best in the world. I mean, that's what I want. You know, and it's going to take all of us. It's not just myself or you or you know, whoever. It's going to take all of us together. All of us together, you know, kind of pitching in and doing what we do and what we do well, and learning from each other and taking what I've gotten from over here and adding it to something over there, you know, and it's going to be a long journey. It's not going to be a sprint. That's for sure. Yeah.
And it's got to be, you got to look at it as like everything is ancillary to the base training that they're doing as well too. And so, and if you want to help your goalkeeper, honestly, you need to know everything that they are doing. So, you know, if they never told you that they're working with Todd doing this virtual mentoring program, you know, then they're doing a disservice too, you know? So I stress that every young goalkeeper out there, you need to let everyone that you work with know what else you're doing on the side so that they can better help prepare you. Because I'm sure for you, as a virtual mentor, that's probably one of the first things you do, I'm guessing, is that you ask them, okay, what are you doing? Who do you work with? Blah, blah, blah. So I have a better feel to where I can take you.
Yeah. And I want to know that. And I've been one that I've never had a problem. You know, if I'm working with somebody and they've got another goalkeeper coach, great. Awesome. I want you to have multiple voices. You know, Michael, you might do an exercise one way. I might do it another way. Somebody else might do it another way. That's not to say that mine's right or wrong, or yours is right or wrong. Well, they've then got to figure out and take what they're doing with you, take what they're doing with me, they're doing with somebody else, and mold it into their own and figure out what works for them. So I think having multiple voices is massive, you know, in their development. If they just have one voice and one coach all the time, I think it limits their growth because they're not seeing enough of things.
I completely agree with you. So, can you hear me, Todd? I just had a FaceTime call come through.
Yeah, so, no problem.
So that would have been difficult. So as we wrap up right now, guys, there's probably a lot of people out there who, and again, I don't want to make it feel like an infomercial, but I really do believe in what Todd's doing right here. We really did want to share it with everybody here. If somebody out there is interested in the program, where is the best place for them to connect with you? And how does the process work?
Yeah, basically the easiest way to get in touch with me is through the website. You know, the whole program is listed on the website. That's oneonOneGoalkeeping.com. That's the number one, ON, the number one, goalkeeping.com. You can contact me through that. My email's on there, the phone number. There's plenty of information about the program on there. There's a lot of other information about camps, clinics, and everything, but COVID's kind of put a halt to that at the moment. But yeah, if you have ever have any questions about it, feel free. I'm an open book. I'll talk goalkeeping, as you can tell, all day long if you allow me to. So if I can help in any way, whether it's a coach, a player, whatever, I'm more than happy.
Guys, and if by any chance you can't reach Todd, remember you can always reach out to us at contact@inside18media.com or at Goalkeeper Podcast on all social media platforms. I will make sure to relay that information to Todd so he does connect with you guys. Again, guys, we do our best to keep this content pure. You know, it's not about the program. We really want you guys to learn what remote learning is all about, but we needed to have somebody on who understood it, and we really believe in what he's doing there. So we endorse you to check it out, is what we're saying right there. I
appreciate it. Thank you.
Of course, man. That's all the time on Inside the 18, and we are out. Later, guys.